Hi everyone, today we're going to look at understanding FERPA and student data. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It was created in 1974. It really hasn't been updated a whole lot, and that's part of the reason that some people find problems with it. They think that some of the laws are a little too loose now with FERPA. But FERPA is connected to federal funding for school employees. They must comply with FERPA in order for the school to be able to get the federal funding. One of the things that you have to remember is that accidental violations of FERPA have consequences. It doesn't matter if they were not intended, they still have consequences and charges can be filed. So what rights does FERPA grant parents and students? What it does is for parents or students over the age of 18, they're allowed to see the information that the school keeps on them in their student files. Parents and students over 18 can ask for the records to be amended if they find fault with something. They can opt out of military recruitment and disclosures from student directory information. And if they do not like something that's in a file, they have an ability to file a complaint with the Family Compliance Office of the U.S. Department of Education. So you do not want to be caught in violation of FERPA. In order to not be caught in violation of FERPA, you want to make sure that you're always keeping student files locked up and secured. You do not want to leave them lying around. Do not throw papers with any kind of identifiable student information in a trash can. Always shred your information. Make sure you're disposing of it in a proper manner. Keep confidential information confidential. Do not leave papers on your desk that have private information on them. A lot of times teachers have a tendency to just kind of pile things up on their desk. And sometimes that can be a FERPA violation without somebody even intentionally doing that. So you've got to be very careful of what kind of information you leave lying around. What is identifiable student information? It can be a name, it can be enrollment records, social security numbers, student ID numbers, student grades, student schedules, IEP documents, which are also covered under IDEA. But you need to be mindful at the same time that FERPA also covers IEP documents. So regular ed teachers who maybe get a IEP at a glance with accommodations on them, you need to make sure you're keeping those very confidential. And then student exams or papers. Educational record information. So what's in an educational record? You have grades, you have health records, disciplinary records, progress reports, academic testing results, grade point averages, attendance records, and again, that IEP, anything like that also falls under educational record information. Now, the directory is something that's becoming a little bit more controversial because it seems like they're adding more and more information into it. So parents, usually at the start of the year, they're going to have the ability to opt out of the directory information being released. Directory information covers anything from the student's name, their address, their email, their phone number, photos, date of birth, place of birth, participation in sports. So if they're participating in sports, they could disclose their weight and height for sports. Their grade level, for instance, if they're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. So more parents may choose to opt out due to the inclusion of more types of student data. Now, compliance through technology. This is another one of those ones that I think could become very accidental if we are not careful with it. We need to ensure that documents on computers are kept confidential. Never save passwords on your computer, especially into programs that would allow you to get into student grades. Do not open information on screens in the presence of other students or adults that are not directly involved with the student's file or information you're accessing. Close screens before leaving your computer that have student information. Do not leave things open to where a student can walk by and yell out another student's grades to someone. Verify parent emails prior to sending information. That's really important that you make sure that that is a parent email and that you are not emailing information about a son or daughter to someone who isn't even a parent to that child. And then verify data destruction policies with the IT department. Make sure that things are being disposed of and truly wiped off a computer's hard drive when you're disposing of confidential information about students. Be cautious of social media and what you say. This is really important, and it's becoming more and more of a concern for not only students but for teachers. With technology surrounding us everywhere, a lot of times kids are videoing things. A lot of times we see things and you want to go out and tell somebody about what happened, or someone may inquire about it. You need to be very careful. Now, if you witness something on school grounds and you are questioned about it, you can speak to parents or the press about it. But it doesn't mean you should do it just because you can. Within schools, I think there is a certain amount of integrity that you should have. And I think sometimes as a teacher, as a school employee, sometimes talking about things of that nature go against just ethical behavior in a school. So I would strongly encourage you to not go out and speak about that in public. If a principal, though, relays information about something that occurred on school grounds, that must stay confidential. That goes back to a principal reading off records that are in a student's file, and therefore that is protected by FERPA. Be very, very careful with social media. Disclosing inappropriate information is a violation. Whether it's disclosed to one person or like social media so often does, it may be intended for one and it ends up going out to hundreds, if not thousands of people. So you must be very, very cautious about social media and be very smart about the use of it. Okay, schools are not only held to FERPA. Others are involved that are very closely involved with schools. For instance, surveillance cameras. Anytime you have surveillance cameras, anyone who helps to monitor those, they also need to keep information private. Anything about students, they're under the same FERPA regulations that the schools are. The same goes for school software and websites. They must have the understanding that if they have students' birth dates or students' socials or any kind of information like that, that must stay private, and it must be secured and kept safe from any kind of identity theft, fraud, or extortion. So schools need to be very careful. Teachers need to be very careful about any kind of school software they get and make sure that they do have the security and they do have the measures taken to be able to follow FERPA. Video camera recordings in FERPA. This is a funny weirdness, kind of. Images or videos are educational records when they directly relate to a student and are maintained by the educational institution. So if we have video of a student that can, and something goes on with that student, that can directly become part of their educational records, which means parents could have the right to request or view those videos. This gets really shady because there could be other students on those videos. And regardless of that, if their child is on it and it relates to something in their educational records, they do have access to watch those videos. Now, the exception is if it's something to do with law enforcement, and law enforcement is maintaining this the video. So FERPA becomes a little bit more flexible, and with protected information, if it's being disclosed for health and safety of student and staff. But if the law enforcement has the video, though, parents are not able to view that video. But once again, if there is something that is a violation of health and safety, students and staff may be informed about something that would possibly look like it would break regulations with FERPA. Immigration laws and FERPA. We live in an area where this is a reality for many of our students. So we do need to understand the laws of how FERPA and immigration laws work together. If ICE agents, they should not be inquiring about student records without cause, and they must be able to show that they've got a court order or they have a subpoena. And the school system is also allowed to get their school attorney involved in this to ensure that everything is valid. They also need to be able to look to see if parents have to be notified prior to the court order, and to let them know that there's a court order and subpoena. Students and parents do not need to disclose their citizenship status to schools in order to establish residency in the district. This is another thing that we need to be mindful of, that we do not have the right to ask somebody about their citizenship. Schools have no reason to be asking about a social security card or a birth certificate as a condition of enrollment. Disclosure of student citizenship could violate FERPA if information is gathered from student records. So teachers, if you do find out about a student's citizenship status, that's something that you probably should keep to yourself, and you should not let others know the status of students in the school. Complaints and compliance. So if a violation of FERPA is reported, sometimes these used to take months to years to complete. Investigations and trying to find resolutions to these could take longer than what it actually took for a resolution to take place on its own. So they're trying to work to revise this to become more timely. So the department acts as an intermediary between schools and parents and students. A large number of complaints involve accidental disclosure of student records. Again, it's not somebody purposely going out and disclosing private information. It's an accidental disclosure of student records, which, once again, you need to understand that it is so important to not leave things out, to not accidentally start speaking about a student and disclosing private information. So the department, they'll work with FERPA policies. They'll work to bring FERPA policies into compliance within the schools. And most of the time, this is very successful. If it is not, and only if all the hoops have been jumped through and they're still not able to come to a resolution, then schools can lose their funding. It can be withheld until compliance is met. So it's very important for schools to make sure they're remaining compliant and they're following FERPA laws. And so here are my references. And these can be looked to get more information on FERPA and all the ways that schools can protect themselves and make sure that they're following all the laws of FERPA.